Today we're visiting Reading Museum. It's a small museum and it's often overlooked, but it's actually one of my favourites as town museums go. In the town centre, 2 streets away from the railway station, is the town hall, and at the side of that is the entrance to the museum. It's a free museum. You have some interesting exhibits here, like there's a very nice Greek vase there. And then there's a number of items from around Reading. So they have some items dug up in a back garden, some items found in a loft. Bit of a collection of interesting things to kind of inspire children with what history is around them. Up at the top, they've got these 3 lovely firemen's helmets and 2 of the brass plaques that you used to put on a building when you'd bought insurance. Because before there was a fire service, you bought private fire insurance and you needed to have a certificate, and the certificate was the metal stamp on the side of the building, the plaque. Also some paintings of around Reading. And here's modern day Silchester. It was the old Roman town of Caleva Atrabatum. And on the ground floor is a collection of general history from Reading and the abbey. Then on the floor above you have a reproduction of the Bayeux tapestry. And on the 3rd floor, very good room about the Roman town that's about 9 miles away. We've got a separate video on that coming up on Monday. And also there's some pottery and a room about biscuits, because there used to be a biscuit company in Reading. So it's a very Reading focused museum, but a well curated, good quality exhibition for a free town museum of a medium sized town. It's pretty good. I particularly like the Bayeux tapestry and the Roman section. I would come here just for the Bayeux tapestry because it's the only complete one I'm aware of in Britain. Even when you go to Battle Abbey, they don't actually have the whole Bayeux tapestry. They have sections, they talk about it. But here is actually the whole Bayeux tapestry, full scale, woven by some ladies in Derbyshire. So return to the 1st floor. We're in the Abbey sections. Very good explanation of the Abbey, some artefacts, some of the things that happen there. It was founded by Henry I, opened by Thomas à Becket actually, with Henry III in attendance. And Henry I, although he died in Europe, he actually was brought back. His body was preserved as best they could, not very well. And he was brought back to Reading. And the Abbey is just about 5 or 6 minutes walk away. If you come out, turn left, go through the park. It's the other side of the park. And then there was other things from around Reading, like Gillette was based here. And there was computer companies. There's quite a bit of computer equipment. And Silver Cross, the pram company. There's also a nice collection in one corner of boxes that you can take for a school. There's a wide collection of items here. My favourite on this section is probably the Boar's Head there, which was above the Boar's Head pub, which I actually drank in 20 years ago. There is a flight of stairs, but I'm going to take a lift straight up to the top floor. You see here the Bayeux tapestry. We're just going past that floor. And at the top here, it opens up into an atrium with a nice skylight. And there's a painting of a famous potter from the area. And there's quite a few pieces of his pottery. There's also some mosaic floors that were dug up in Silchester. And they're quite impressive. They're not as beautiful as maybe the ones in the British Museum, but they are very nice examples of Roman mosaics. Here's the pottery. It's quite attractive. And quite a sparse room with the items very spread out, nicely exhibited. The rest of the museum's quite crowded, but one never feels crowded. Crowded's a bit unfair. It's quite busy, it's quite full. And there's some more mosaics round this end with a seating area. You see, nice example of original Roman mosaic flooring. Then round into the room next to it, there's a collection of wildlife from a local area. So there's a deer, otter there, various birds and wildlife. Very nice red kite. You see a red kite in the air regularly when you're out towards Reading. But here's the red kite, unfortunately obscured by the glare. But you don't realise quite how big they are until you're close to them, because they are generally quite high. And there's badgers and trouts and pike and egret, a heron. Nice collection. Reminds me a little bit of Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery's wildlife collection. And then various animals from around the area. And please, I'm very old, don't stroke me. I'm sure a lot of visitors do. And various fossils, particularly woolly mammoth bones and jaws. Quite a good explanation back from the Ice Age. And a beautiful deer, very beautiful. Here's the little one. You find a lot in Berkshire. And then a giant stag behind, which I seem to have missed altogether. And a small, very small selection of stones. There's a card at the back, so you can touch the stone and you can guess which one's chalk, which one's gravel, which one's granite, sandstone. An explanation of the types of soils and deposits and rocks in the area around Reading. It's well done, but I'd say unless you're from the Reading area, that map probably isn't going to mean very much to you. A good selection, and not too big, which, if you've seen my video on, well, several museums with rocks, can get a bit overwhelming, the scale of the collections. And you definitely have to have an interest to want to look at thousands of different rocks. Here's the red deer. And I've put the camera up. Stag, it's quite an impressive stag. Rabbits and hares and another badger. I wasn't quite sure why they had two badgers. But I won't complain. They're nice looking animals. They're a little aggressive if you ever bump into one. I once startled one late at night, and it wasn't unfriendly, but it didn't take it well. There's a small wall here of birds from the area. That's the skeleton of a fox, quite nicely exhibited. And it was very difficult to shoot them, but there was a lot of insects in those cabinets. Some people might be quite glad that I couldn't actually get the angle on the insects. But various beetles and wasps and bees and creepy crawlies. Then just down a side corridor, probably should be a bit better signpost, it's quite easy to miss, is an exhibit about biscuits. Because Huntley and Palmer's were one of the leading makers of biscuits in the UK. And they were based in Reading right through till 1969. So there's a history of the company. There's a model of their factory, which I actually saw on the way out of town. If you head down the London Road, just after the Priory, it's on the left-hand side and it's quite easy to spot. Doesn't really look like that at all anymore. But there's a frontage that still has Huntley and Palmer's on it. So here there's a large collection of cake tins, and if you look through them, most people in their 40s, their grandmother would have at least one of those tins. There's a couple of them. The blue Wedgwood design there on the right-hand side reminds me of one my granny had. A nice collection of different designs and shapes and commemorative tins of biscuits. It's suitable for Reading because of the connection. And it's a lovely teapot down there on the left-hand side, which was actually designed to look like one of the Huntley and Palmer tins. They had a very specific, quite elegant design to their tins. They're all in very good condition, interesting. This room's all Huntley and Palmer's. And then down at the end, you turn into a very light room with windows on either side. And that was actually an art studio. So there's an exhibition, or permanent exhibition, of sculptures. And there's some quite beautiful sculptures, plates, art. And it's very much inspired by the fact that this is where painting and sculpting happened. The Reading School of Arts was here for about 30 or 40 years. And quite stunning piece here. Little bit graphic, not for children, but it's a very nice piece of work, beautifully carved. And you can see down into the, well, not exactly the high street, but the street outside. There's some pieces of art and drawings of the town, sketches. Around here's Caleva Tribatum. Always struggle to pronounce that one. It's Silchester, it's called today. This has been being excavated for about a century now, off and on. The Museum of Reading has a regular annual dig there, and there's a very good explanation of the grid, the structure, how the excavations have progressed, the rediscovery of the town. And I quite like this gallery, the way that it kind of looks a bit like parts of Roman buildings. You certainly have a lot more buildings and structure here than you do in the actual town. The town, sadly, really has been lost to time, apart from the amphitheatre and the walls. I did a video on Silchester recently, so you check that out. That should be going up on one of the Saturday History Unbound. Now here's some nice pieces from the digs at Silchester, and also a piece about the different types of food, because it was a very cosmopolitan society with economic links across the whole of Europe and North Africa, explanations of working life and some finds there. And here's a model of the town itself, which really is large. When you walk around those walls, the walls are still in place. When you walk around them, they are very substantial. I'd say any visit to Silchester, it's actually very good to start with Reading Museum because it's very close. And there's some small fragments from the basilica. You can see even in the dig there wasn't much left. But there's a nice explanation of the layout, the building, the structure, examples of the building materials and buildings, the laws, the foods that are eaten. Probably, well, actually, almost certainly the best piece from Silchester is this, the Silchester Eagle, which was displayed in the forum. Very beautiful little piece, very detailed, real craftsmanship. If you think that's 2,000 or nearly 2,000 years old, really quite remarkable. Certainly not much from pre-Roman in the UK that's anywhere near that quality. I made an explanation of the public baths. There's a little sort of cut through section in the floor of a hypercaust, some togas that you can try on. I'd say they were probably a little small for me. But nice tiles here from the Roman baths. And again, as I say, completely gone. That's probably the whole of what's left of Silchester, apart from the walls and the amphitheatre. Because if you see the amphitheatre on the left there, you could still walk to that. It is parking for a car, but it was closed when I was there. I had to park at the church, which is kind of in the left-hand corner over there on that map. There's an explanation of how they're looking to expand it. They're looking for funding to renovate this room, because it's a very good room, but I'd say it hasn't changed since I first visited here 30 years ago. But very, very good quality museum. And I'd say this is probably my second favourite room in it. Does justice to the Reading area, and always very quiet. Like a lot of town museums, it struggles to get in the visitors because people just don't go to museums that much. The explanation there of gladiators and the amphitheatre. And actually the Celevans, before the Romans, it was the capital of a small tribe led by a Gallic gentleman called Commimus, I think. And there's a reconstruction of the gate, which if you watch my video on Silchester, we went to that gate and you'll see it looks very different to that today. But an interesting room about Silchester. And actually inspired me to go straight to Silchester. I wasn't planning to go until I was in this room and saw this and realised it was only 9 miles away. And I did enjoy it, although I keep saying there's nothing there apart from the wall. It is still very impressive. And also, it's just such a beautiful spot with absolutely no one apart from a handful of dog walkers and about 4 miles of Roman wall. Here's a small collection of books that you can browse. Some examples of pottery on the wall. But we're going to head downstairs now to the first floor. And there's some paintings of bishops at the abbey, which are very good, but I'd say would probably be better on the ground floor with the abbey section. I guess there wasn't space. And there's a little throne where you can pretend to be Henry. Now here's the Bayeux tapestry, and this is the definite treasure of this museum. It's not the real Bayeux tapestry, but it is a full-size recreation. You can walk through the Bayeux tapestry and you can see Bishop Odo's version of the Norman invasion, because the Bayeux tapestry is not a strict historical document. The Bayeux tapestry is commissioned by Bishop Odo, the half-brother of William the Bastard, who after this became William the Conqueror. And Bishop Odo, you can actually see him at one point in here. He's the gentleman on a horse with a club and not a spear or a sword, because priests weren't allowed to draw blood, but they were allowed to fight for money. So he did fight in the battle, but he clubbed people to death because it was improper for a priest to kill people with a knife. And it tells the story of the promise by Harold that he will recognise William's right to Britain when a king dies. Then he breaks that, then they've landed, then they build Hastings Castle and defend that position. Then they work their way inland, and the well, I mean, we'll tell the story in a lot more detail in some other videos. We've actually, coming up, we've got a live action recreation of the Battle of Hastings, but you'll have to wait until later in the year for that. But very interesting seeing the Bayeux tapestry. Gives you a lot of the feeling of seeing the Bayeux tapestry without actually having to cross to France to Bayeux. So I'd say I hope you enjoyed the Reading Museum. I really like it. I'm very fond of it. But I'd say the Silchester room's very good. The section on the Abbey very well explains its history. The Bayeux tapestry section is excellent. And I also just like the eclectic collections of items from Reading. It puts subtle, fairly unimportant minor pieces and shows them in the context of the town and the life and the changing life of the town of Reading. So well worth a visit. It's free, it's easy to get to, and park round the corner at the Octagon would be my suggestion. But yeah, well worth a visit. And hopefully subscribe, and we'll be back next Saturday with a Unbound History, and next Monday we'll have another museum tour.